Today's video has been sponsored by Lost in Cult to showcase pre-orders for their upcoming Outer Wilds Design Works book, packed with never-before-seen art of the characters and locations from one of the greatest games ever made. This isn't just an art book though, as it also includes a deep look into the history and development of the game, featuring extensive interviews with its creators. Read all about every step of the game's production, from its inspirations to its music. There's also a deluxe edition that also includes a 3D papercraft spaceship model to assemble, 6 National Park style posters, a solar system map, a postcard set, a sticker sheet and bookmark, and 10 embossed projection stones that fit into the book itself to uncover a new secret. Both editions are available to pre-order now through the link in the description and pinned comments below, but please note that the deluxe edition is only available until November 2nd. Hello everybody and welcome back to Spacedock. I'm Hujuana and today we'll be covering a more ephemeral side of many sci-fi spaceships, their names, what they can symbolise, and the characterisation that can come out of that. Now, we can't talk about the subject of ship names without bringing up some of the more overused classics, things like Prometheus. And yeah, names like this show up a lot, but they are easy to grasp for an audience. They're simple to understand, which helps to rapidly set expectations without leaving anyone puzzling over what a name might mean, which is all perfectly reasonable. Sometimes though, the name can be so easy to grasp that it comes off as just being a little bit silly from an in-universe perspective. Like, why would they call the spacecraft in Sunshine Icarus? That's just asking for trouble. It's not all silly though. Stargate SG-1 having the first proper human spaceship be named Prometheus just makes sense. The whole deal of that show is humanity taking technology from those claiming to be gods and using it for themselves, and the link to fire specifically can be seen as having deeper meaning. The ship's hyperdrive used a dangerous, unstable material that ended up exploding, so in some ways the fire they took from the gods burned them. It also gets a pass for using this name because the writers knew and poked fun at it.
It's a Greek tragedy, who wants that?
A counterexample to these overdone names comes from Warframe, which generally does a pretty good job with trying a bit harder with looking for inspiration for naming, which is part of what makes it stand out. The specific example I want to use here is the Balor Fomorian, a massive ship class named after the Fomorians from Irish mythology. These were hostile supernatural beings, and their leader, Balor, has a big ol' eye in his forehead that destroys stuff when opened, just like the ship does. A ship with a deceptively simple but very meaningful name is Serenity, named after the Battle of Serenity Valley, a disastrous loss for the independence movement that Malcolm Reynolds was a part of. So the name holds deep significance for him, but the ship itself is also a symbol. To him it means freedom from the Alliance, a little bit of independence to hang on to, and to perhaps use to spitefully stick in the eye of the Alliance if the opportunity presents itself. This makes the Reaver disguise in the movie all the more impactful. He debases both himself and the symbolic ship in the face of the operative butchering his friends. That got a bit dark, so onto something a little lighter. The ship names in the culture are very well known thanks to their chaotic and oftentimes jovial nature, and the Gravitas line of ships even pokes fun at the whole idea of cool ship names in general. Despite that, there are also genuinely fantastic names like Sleeper Service from Accession, which is a 2-level pun based on different meanings of the word sleeper, based on being meant for passengers, and also transforming itself into the fastest ship ever built. And the ship renamed itself from Quietly Confident, which also applies to the capabilities it shows in the book. Halo took much inspiration from the culture, including some of the general vibe of the ship names. And yeah, older Halo ship names broadly sound cool and deep, but I don't know, they seem like they're trying too hard for what they actually are. The exception is the Spirit of Fire, which is a killer name to start with, but also calls back to it being a Phoenix class. These used to be colony ships, but were refit to warships to put down civil unrest before being dragged into the Covenant War. Here, its unique mix of weapons and factory facilities made it an excellent support ship. It really rose from the ashes of the scrap heap to become something special. Hey? Get it? Next up is Rocinante, named after Don Quixote's old horse, and I really can't put this any better than Winchell Chung does. Well, I personally found Rocinante an appropriate name for a spaceship that was basically the steed of an idiot who was constantly tilting at windmills. What more is there to say, really? A similar bit of foreshadowing comes from Babylon 5's EAS Agamemnon, the old ship of John Sheridan before he took over leadership of the Babylon 5 station itself. Agamemnon is named for the mythological king of Mycenae, who united the Greeks in order to fight the Trojans. This ties back into Babylon 5's own mythology, as Sheridan goes on to form the Interstellar Alliance. It started out pretty simply as a way for different civilizations to cooperate against the Shadows. In order to get things moving along a bit faster, Sheridan engaged in some underhanded dealings that mirror the way Agamemnon forced Odysseus to join by threatening his son. Sheridan wasn't quite as harsh as the myth was, but it still fits, and it all builds up into a great alliance that stood for over 1,000,000 years. Quite the accomplishment. From one Greek mythology-using franchise to another now as we move to Battlestar Galactica, which doesn't really have spaceship names that are meaningful because they come from the original show. All this has happened before and all that. Instead, the way the ships were shown and talked about, their reputations, and the way they were commanded was where the symbolism and characterization comes in. Galactica was great in her day, but Pegasus is newer and better. It has more guns with automated systems. It has enormous bow-mounted cannons. It has more flight decks due to the upside-down ones, and can rapidly launch more fighters and even Raptors. Beyond all that, it also carries manufacturing facilities and special training equipment, though we never saw either directly. It was infinitely superior to the old Warhorse, and that was how people treated the two. Galactica was the bucket, and Pegasus was the beast. There was also a stark difference in the command style between Adama and Kane. He was personable but measured, and had civilian issues to consider. Galactica itself reflected this change due to partial conversion to a museum ship. A literal part of it had become civilian as the old girl reached retirement. This was further compounded after New Caprica, when the disused flight pod became the home to the displaced. In contrast, Kane was utterly ruthless, almost to the point of cruelty, as a result of being left alone to fight the Cylons. Rather than helping civilians evacuate, she chose to strip the civilian ships of useful parts and even crew before abandoning the rest to their fates. Sacrifices were made for the purposes of vengeance. These disparate philosophies of the two officers became part of the ships they were in charge of, and Kane, being Adama's commanding officer, further cemented the superiority of Pegasus over Galactica. That's cool and everything, but figuring out a spaceship name or characterization that is all symbolic and wrapped in layers of significance might seem like a lot of effort for you, and that's fine. This goes back to those overused names from the start, but really, not every spaceship needs to go super deep on the meaning, like Star Trek often doesn't. Instead, the ship names there are often meant to evoke a feeling, express intent, or are a simple reference to something the creator liked. While on that last one, the meaning of the name Enterprise has changed because of Star Trek. It's now inherently tied to that franchise. You just can't use it in other settings, even if you're naming it after the real-world ships that use the word.
Sir, we can't call it the Enterprise.
Why not?
Sir, there's another starship coming in. It's the Enterprise.
So really, you can name your spaceships whatever you want. You can pack them full of symbolism and character, or you can just put a cool sounding word on the side. But it does make it harder to add more depth to whatever it is you're creating, but it is possible to do through other avenues. And thinking up a cool name that also has meaning, either to you or in a way that says something deeper, can be a fun puzzle in and of itself. You can support Spacedock by joining our Patreon, where you can get our frigate and spacefighter design reference books. Alternatively, you can support us directly through YouTube by becoming a channel member. Thanks to our supporters, and thank you for watching.